The chamber was built for spectacle, not justice. It curved inward like a hollowed star, tiers of alien delegates rising in concentric arcs, their silhouettes framed by cold auroral light. At the center stood a single platform of black crystal. Ambassador Elias Wren waited there alone, hands at his sides, spine straight, eyes calm. He wore no restraints. The council had decided dignity would make the ending sharper. Across 400 systems, the broadcast signal stabilized. Arch-Chancellor Virex Call leaned forward, talons folded, eyes reflecting the chamber's glow. Let the record show, he intoned, that the human envoy stands accused of violating existential balance statutes. Weaponization of spacetime. Covert expansion. Deceptive compliance. Murmurs rippled. Elias listened without blinking. The words were old, he'd heard them whispered in corridors, encoded in trade delays, hidden in inspections that never ended. Fear dressed as law. Ambassador Wren, Virex said, how do you plead? Elias inhaled once. Not guilty, he replied, voice steady, human, unamplified. And I request the evidence. A pause. The Chancellor gestured. A lattice of light flared, projecting images, equations stripped of context, star maps misaligned, simulations frozen at moments that suggested catastrophe. To an untrained eye, it looked damning. To Elias, it was a collage of half-truths. Your models assume intent, Elias said, turning slightly so the camera caught his profile. They ignore safeguards you demanded. You cite projections without margins. You call research a weapon because you fear its outcome. Virex's mandibles clicked. We call it survival. So do we, Elias answered. Which is why we shared our methods. Which is why we disarmed when asked. Which is why we submitted to inspections that no other member endures. The chamber cooled. Delegates shifted. Somewhere, a translator lagged, struggling to keep up with the cadence of reason. Virex raised a claw. Enough. The council has deliberated. Elias nodded, once. He had expected this. The verdict had been written before his ship docked, before his first word crossed the hall. He thought of Earth then, not as a planet, but as a web of people awake at impossible hours, watching with held breath. He did not let the thought linger. Sentence, Virex continued, is immediate termination. The words struck like vacuum. No gasps followed. The council had practiced this silence. Elias stepped forward a fraction. I request 30 seconds. Laughter chimed from the upper tiers, thin and sharp. Virex's eyes narrowed. For what purpose? To speak, Elias said. Not in defense. In record. The Chancellor considered. Magnanimity played well on broadcasts. Granted. 30 seconds. The timer ignited, a faint ring of light circling the platform. Elias faced the lens. People of the Compact, he began, and the room leaned in despite itself. We came here believing peace could be built from transparency. We believed restraint was strength. If you are right, if fear must rule, then you will see what you chose today. Virex hissed. The ring brightened. Earth will not retaliate today, Elias said. Not because we cannot, but because we choose to measure our response. Remember that difference. The ring dimmed. Silence returned, heavier now. End transmission, Virex ordered. The execution field rose without ceremony, a clean geometry of light. Elias did not close his eyes. In the last instant, he smiled, not defiant, not afraid. Resolute. Across the galaxy, screens went black. On Earth, no one spoke. The confirmation arrived as a single line of text, time-stamped in absolute. In a room buried beneath continents and oceans, leaders stood as one. No votes were taken. No arguments offered. A protocol older than the broadcast unlocked, piece by piece, as if the planet itself had been waiting. In the empty chamber, Virex settled back. Containment achieved, he declared to the record. Let this be a lesson. Far away, alarms did not sound. Lights did not flash. Systems aligned. Humanity did not scream. The price of silence had been paid. The room beneath Earth had no windows and no flags. It didn't need either. The walls were matte basalt, the table a single slab of composite glass that showed nothing unless asked. When the confirmation arrived, it appeared as a thin white line across the surface: time, place, status. Final. No one reacted. President Mara Ionescu rested her palms on the table. Her voice, when she spoke, was calm. Mark it. The line changed color. Somewhere far below, a clock stopped pretending it mattered. General Sato broke the silence, not with outrage, but with procedure. Condition black acknowledged. Cross-domain synchronization in progress. A second line bloomed, green, steady. Then a dozen more. Space, cyber, logistics, science, civilian continuity. Each discipline answered as if they had rehearsed this moment for decades. They had. Ionescu nodded once. Confirm trigger. Dr. Halvorsen, whose hands built futures instead of weapons, answered without looking up. Biometric cessation verified. The protocol recognized the event before the broadcast ended. A breath passed through the room. Not relief. Not grief. Acceptance. Elias knew, Sato said quietly. He helped write it, Halvorsen replied. He argued for the delay parameters. He said retaliation without comprehension becomes noise. Ionescu closed her eyes for a count of 3. She saw Elias as he'd been the last time they spoke, standing by a viewport, Earth reflected in the glass like a promise he refused to romanticize. If they kill me, he'd said, don't mistake precision for mercy. The table shifted, displaying a lattice of points beyond soul. Human assets, hidden in plain sight, activated one by one. Research vessels that weren't vessels. Relays disguised as trade nodes. Observatories that listened more than they looked. Phase 1, Sato said. No kinetic signatures. Good, Ionescu said. We notify. A message assembled itself without flourish. No threats. No demands. A timestamp. A citation. A statement of fact. Annihilation protocol is active. It went out on the same channels the Council used for ceremony. On a world 3 jumps from the Citadel, the stars dimmed. Not exploded. Not torn. They dimmed, as if a hand had turned a dial. Energy flows rerouted themselves into silence. Ships lost orientation, then power, then fear. Nothing screamed. There was no debris. In the Council's monitoring halls, analysts stared at clean graphs falling into absence. This is a sensor fault, one insisted. Check redundancy, another snapped. Redundancy agreed. Virex Call stood alone at his console, mandibles tight. Explain. A junior aide swallowed. The system didn't collapse, Chancellor. It was removed. From our equations. Removed by what? Virex demanded. The aide hesitated. By a process that respects boundaries. It's not attacking matter. It's editing access. Across the galaxy, human infrastructure continued to move without haste. Factories shifted production. Universities rerouted compute. Hospitals stayed open. Farmers finished harvests. The protocol had been designed to preserve life at home even as it ended futures elsewhere. Elias had insisted on that clause. If we break ourselves to win, he'd said, we've already lost. Back beneath Earth, Halvorsen watched a model stabilize. They're trying to isolate the effect, she said. They can't. It's embedded in their dependence. Ionescu leaned forward. Begin Phase 2 disclosures. A second message followed the first. Longer. Still restrained. It included Elias's final 30 seconds, uncut. His voice traveled again, steady as ever, finding ears that had laughed before. In the council chamber, delegates recoiled as the recording played. Some recognized the cadence now, the warning they'd mistaken for decorum. Virex cut the feed. Silence it. It's being rebroadcast by non-human networks, the aide said. They're choosing to carry it. Why? Virex snapped. Because it explains what's happening, the aide said, then lowered their eyes. On a dozen worlds, leaders convened emergency councils of their own. The message wasn't a threat, that was the problem. Threats could be negotiated. Notifications could not. A merchant prince whispered, "They're not angry." A scholar answered, "They're organized." The first countermeasure launched from a border system, an aggressive scan, a spike of force meant to provoke a response. The spike vanished, neatly, like a wave breaking on glass. Back on Earth, Sada watched the attempt fail. No retaliation. They're testing us. We'll keep letting them, Ionescu said. Until they understand. The table displayed a final layer, choices. Jurisdictions that could decouple from the compact's command lattice. Systems that could survive by stepping back. Elias had argued for this too. Offer exits, he'd said. Make the lesson optional. First acceptance just came in, Halvorsen said. They're asking how to disengage. Send the instructions, Ionescu replied. No penalties. Hours passed. More lights dimmed, selectively, always ahead of panic, always just enough to be undeniable. No species was targeted. No world burned. The terror came from restraint wielded with certainty. In the Citadel, Virex finally understood the shape of the mistake. He opened a private channel, voice stripped of ceremony. Earth, he said, stand down. We will convene. Terms. The reply arrived before he finished. Terms were offered. They were answered with execution. Virex stared at the console, seeing not defeat but irrelevance. Beneath Earth, the room remained quiet. The protocol advanced, measured and exact. Humanity did not celebrate. It did not mourn aloud. It proceeded. The galaxy learned fear without flames. News spread faster than ships. Systems dimmed not from destruction but omission, as if reality itself had edited the margins. Trade lanes went quiet. Data sanctuaries returned nulls. The compact's authority fractured, not with rebellion, but with absence. Worlds that had never known restraint felt it press against them like a held breath. On the Citadel, Arch-Chancellor Virex Call watched the maps thin. His chamber, once crowded with ritual and echo, now held only aides who spoke in whispers. Every screen showed the same truth from different angles. Dependence had become a trap. Open all channels, Virex ordered. Offer concessions. Reparations. Apologies. An aide hesitated. They aren't asking for anything. Virex's mandibles tightened. Everyone asks for something. The aide met his gaze. They already did. Across the void, Earth's response arrived, not to Virex alone, but to every listening world. The signal was simple, authenticated, and quiet. Elias Wren's final words played again, followed by a single line of human text. Restraint remains available. The meaning was unmistakable. This was not conquest. It was a boundary, enforced. On a council world far from the Citadel, a matriarch convened her elders. We will decouple, she said. Now. But the compact, one protested. Has become a liability, she finished. The humans are not erasing us. They are asking us to choose. One by one, systems stepped back. Jurisdictional lattices unraveled. Command keys went dark. The galaxy reorganized itself around a truth it had avoided: safety could not be legislated by fear alone. Back beneath Earth, the basalt room remained unchanged. President Ionescu stood with her hands clasped behind her back, eyes on the table as it tracked compliance curves. General Sato waited, patient as stone. Status, Ionescu said. 72% of compact systems have disengaged from centralized control, Sato replied. Casualties, none confirmed. Infrastructure loss contained to command layers. Dr. Halvorsen exhaled softly. They're learning. A new alert surfaced, Citadel priority. Virex calls seal pulsed. Put it through, Ionescu said. Virex appeared, diminished by the absence of ceremony. His voice was raw. Earth. End this. You have made your point. Ionescu held his gaze. We ended nothing. You did. You are dismantling the compact, Virex said. We are offering exits, Ionescu replied. You are free to take one. Virex's eyes flicked away. And if I refuse? Then you remain, Ionescu said, evenly. Within the consequences of your choices. Silence stretched. Virex swallowed pride that had ruled centuries. What do you want? Ionescu did not answer immediately. She touched the table, and Elias's image appeared, still, composed, unafraid. We want what we asked for before, she said. Parity. Transparency. An end to executions disguised as law. Virex looked at the image and looked away. If I agree? Then we halt, Ionescu said. Not because you surrender, but because you comply. The Chancellor closed his eyes. When he opened them, something old had cracked. I will convene an open tribunal. The statutes will be repealed. The verdict will be acknowledged as murder. A breath passed through the room beneath earth. Not triumph. Closure. Transmit the reforms, Ionescu said. Publicly. The Citadel broadcast changed tone. Decrees dissolved. Authority decentralized. Virex spoke the words that undid him, and the galaxy listened. Phase limits engaged. Systems stabilized. The dimming ceased. On a world that had gone quiet first, lights returned, not all, not the same, but enough. Ships powered up. Children slept through it, never knowing how close the future had come to vanishing. Back on Earth, the table cleared itself. The protocol receded, not erased, but archived, ready, watchful. Sato broke the quiet. We could have gone further. Ionescu nodded. We chose not to. Halvorsen folded her hands. Elias would approve. They stood together then, three figures in a room built for endurance, carrying the weight of a choice that would echo for generations. In the Citadel, Virex Call stood alone. The stars outside his viewport burned steadily again. He understood now that humanity's terror had never been its weapons, but its discipline, the ability to stop. Earth's final message crossed the void, addressed to all. You executed our envoy. We responded with limits. Remember this difference. The galaxy did. What survived humanity was not annihilation, but the knowledge that peace, once denied, could be enforced, and then offered again. The galaxy did not return to normal. It learned. In the months that followed the halting of the protocol, silence became a language. Borders shifted without war. Councils reformed without spectacle. Systems that had relied on inherited dominance now negotiated in daylight, their leverage replaced by accountability. Humanity did not oversee the transition. It refused the throne it could have taken, and that refusal unsettled everyone. On Earth, memorial rain fell over a city Elias Wren had once walked without escort. No statues were raised. No speeches thundered. His name was etched into a black wall beside others who had carried unbearable weight quietly. People left no flowers, only notes, folded small, written plain. Beneath the planet, the basalt room opened for the last time under condition black. President Ionescu stood at the head of the table, older now, lines earned rather than hidden. Archive status, she asked. Dr. Halvorsen answered, voice steady. Protocol sealed. Redundant keys distributed. No single authority can activate it again. General Sato nodded. As intended. Ionescu looked at the empty chair where Elias would have stood if the universe had been kinder. Then we're finished. No, Sato said gently. We're responsible. The table lit once more, not with targets or curves, but with requests. Dozens of worlds asked for observers, mediators, engineers. Not weapons. Not shields. Help. Recommend response? Ionescu asked. Halvorsen smiled faintly. Send teachers. So they did. Human ships arrived stripped of menace. Their holds carried libraries, clinics, power grids that didn't demand loyalty. Where they landed, they listened first. Where they were feared, they waited. Humanity's reputation shifted from terror to reference point. What happened when patience was mistaken for weakness? On the Citadel, Arch-Chancellor Virex Call presided over a chamber that no longer bowed. His authority had narrowed, but his vision had widened. When he spoke now, he chose words carefully. A delegate asked him once, bitter and afraid, "Do you trust them?" Virex answered honestly. "I trust their rules." The delegate scoffed. "Rules can change." "Yes," Virex said. "That is why there's a written to stop." Across the stars, children grew up with different maps. The compact's old insignia faded from hulls, replaced by local symbols bound by transparent accords. The idea of executing envoys became unthinkable, not from taboo, but from memory. On Earth, Ionescu prepared to leave office. Her successor waited with humility she insisted upon. On her final day, she stood alone in the memorial hall, hand resting on the wall. "You were right," she said softly. Stopping mattered. The air offered no reply. She didn't need one. Far away, on a fringe world spared by a timely exit, a young alien engineer watched a human instructor recalibrate a reactor without condescension. "Why help us?" the engineer asked. The instructor shrugged. "Because if we don't, someone else will. And they might not stop." The words traveled, carried by people who had learned what limits meant. Years later, historians argued about the turning point. Some named the first dimming. Others cited the reforms. A few understood it had been the moment a species capable of erasing futures chose instead to define them. In a quiet archive beneath Earth, Elias Wren's file closed with a final annotation, unsigned and precise. Outcome aligns with intent. The galaxy moved forward, not healed, but wiser. It knew now that peace was not the absence of force, but the presence of restraint, and that some lines, once crossed, redraw the map forever. Humanity watched the stars with the same discipline it had shown when they went dark. Ready. Waiting. Choosing. The shape of tomorrow held.